we move upstairs, see the palaver hall where buying and selling of human beings took place. From there, we'll bring the guided tour to an end. But before we begin with the tour of the castle, I'm going to give you a brief history about the castles we have in Ghana and then the transatlantic slave trade on the west coast of Africa. Basically, in Ghana, there are 3 castles dotted along the coast of Ghana. We have St. George's Castle in 𝙏𝙝𝙖𝙣𝙠 built by the Portuguese in 1482. We also have the Christiansborg Castle in Osu, Accra, built by the Danes in 1661. Finally, we have Cape Coast Castle, built by the British in 1665. And so, out of these 3 castles, 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙣𝙠 Castle, or the St. George's Castle, it is the biggest and the oldest European structure in tropical West Africa. Cape Coast Castle, where we are at the moment, it is the smallest among the 3. However, Cape Coast Castle itself, it was once built as a fort known as the Karelosberg Fort by the Swedish in 1653. Later, the Danes came in for the Swedish, they fought them and then drove them away. So they took in charge of the fort. The Dutch also came in, they also fought the Danes and also drove them away. Following the subsequent Anglo-Dutch war between the British and then the Dutch, the British also came in, they also fought the Dutch, defeated them, and then took away the fort. So basically, it was the British who developed the fort into a castle status as we see today. And so Cape Coast Castle, as it exists today, it was built over a period of 300 years. However, slavery in Africa, it all started at a time when the Spaniards got to what they call the New World. Upon getting to the New World, gold and silver mines were opened, sugar, tobacco, cotton plantations were established. In as much they wanted the wealth from the New World, they were not prepared to do the hard labor. They subjected the natives to do the hard labor. Due to European diseases, the natives were not surviving. They needed to get people to replace the natives. One Catholic missionary by name Bartholomew de las Cascas, he suggested that blacks taken from Africa should be made to work in the plantations. In his opinion, he said Africans, they were doing the same work under similar climatic condition in Africa, and then also Africans are much stronger. For that reason, blacks should be made to work in the plantation. Somewhere around 1512, they took a couple of black people from Spain to Hispaniola. Others also say to Santo Domingo. That is where they were tested on the plantations, and then true to Bartholomew de las Cascas' claim, they all proved to be physically strong, which made the demand for black people rise, and thus began the unfortunate story of misery and pain of black people, the forced exodus of blacks and Africans from their motherland to the world unknown. The trade wasn't in Ghana only. The whole of West Africa, from wherever these enslaved Africans were captured along West Africa, they would have to walk barefooted to the castles. But before they were brought down to the castles, they were first of all taken to 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙣𝙠 slave market. That is where these enslaved Africans took their last African bath. But please remember, not everyone went through the slave market. Those of the captives who went through the slave market would have to come from a specific direction. Those of the captives who were being captured from the northern part of the country, like Tamale, Kumasi, Salaga, Techiman, they were the ones who would have to go through 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙣𝙠. Anybody coming from different angle would also have to use different slave market. And so those coming from the northern part of the country, they walk, they get to a village called 𝙏𝙗𝙖𝙣𝙠. Within the village, you can locate a river called the Oche River. That is where the captives were made to take their last African bath. And so the whole concept about the slave market was that it was because they've walked several miles before getting to that very spot. And many of them were tired, others were dirty. And so there was a need for them to allow them to take their bath, shave them, apply pomade on them, just for the old to appear younger, in order to attract higher prices when they get to the castle. That was the whole concept about the slave market. From there, others came in here. Others too might continue the journey to the Elmina Castle. It all depends on who went there to buy who. If it is a British, they move down to this castle. If it is a Portuguese, they continue the journey to the Elmina Castle. But just inside the castle, the captives were being branded with the branded irons. Why were they being branded? It is because different slave companies were buying the captives. These companies wanted to identify whoever they were going to be bought. And so they introduced a branding iron. A branding iron, it is a metal. Just on top of the metal, the slave company has its name or probably has a company's logo on top of the metal. All they would have to do is to insert the metal stick into fire. It gets very hot. Once they pick the stick from the fire, they place it straight on their chest, at their arm or at their back for easy identification. The branding alone was even enough to kill them. After that has been done, they were then separated. The men were kept down here, whilst the women were also kept in the female slave dungeon. Why in the dungeons? In the dungeons because these dungeons served as a transit point for the captives. They need to stay down here from 2 weeks to 3 months, depending on when the slave ships will get to the coast. Once the slave ship gets to the coast, they will have to transport all the captives to the Americas and the Caribbean. The likes of Jamaica, Brazil, Argentina, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Virginia, New York, only few others were taken to Europe. Over there, they auction the captives, they sell them out to plantation owners for them to work in their newfound plantations. The trade officially ended in England in 1807, but in those of the British inside this very edifice, they refused to end the trade in 1807, but then they rather continued with the trade till 1833, which was finally abolished in here. The trade lasted for more than 400 years, more than 4 centuries. So I'm going to pause for a while. If there are questions you'd love to ask, please do so before we begin with the talk.
I think no question. Yeah, no question.
We are still in shock.
Yeah. Not really. Not really, but we're still
So we're going to move down. The floor slopes a bit slippery in here. Let us take our time.
Very dark. Dark. Too dark. They have even planted lights around. If they... Hey, Charlie.
Alright, so that is a male dungeon. This is where captured enslaved African men were held. This very dungeon, it was designed to hold as many as 1,000 men.
1,000 men.
The place is full to its capacity. 1,000 men were held in here. They were not allowed to move outside. They defecated, urinated, vomited. They sat and slept around their own mess. But in the whole idea, these themselves, because they were not entering this wooden bucket on a regular basis, it sometimes get full, and then they were left with no option to ease themselves on the ground. They slept on the bare ground. Others were sleeping on top of the other. And so for where each individual stood, it was a complete apartment for them. Or check on them. Only the stronger ones would have to continue with the journey. And so after the sorting has been done, the stronger ones wouldn't move back towards the main entrance. No, they would exit the dungeon through an underground passage. Behind this wall, there was an underground passage, very big and very wide, about 70 meters from this point. Only the stronger ones would have to make their way through the tunnel. They walk through till they get to the door of no return, where the women can join them. They all move straight into the ships. The tunnel itself, it has been blocked by the British in 1833. For that reason, we cannot move through this tunnel. However, when we step outside, we'll get the opportunity to see how big the tunnel is, where exactly the tunnel ends. But from this point, I'm sorry we can't go through from this very point. But these are flowers or wreath also in here. These were brought in here by Africans, African Americans, people from the Caribbean. They brought them in here to pay homage to their ancestors, to our brothers and sisters who lost their lives during the trade. They mostly bring these flowers in here during Pan-African Historical Theatre Festival, Panafest, or Emancipation Day. That is when these are normally brought in here. And in 2019, Ghana celebrated the year of return, of which many of these were also brought in here. But finally, this is a shrine, African traditional temple. In the olden days, before the Europeans have not introduced Christianity to Africans, or the Arabs have not introduced Islam to Africans, we as Africans, we had our own way of communicating to the Supreme Being. We communicate to the Supreme Being through natural things, like stones, rivers, mountains, trees. It is our belief that once we pray or worship through some of these natural phenomena, our petitions will get to the ancestral world. The ancestors, together with the deities, will carry our petitions to the Supreme Being. We as Africans believe that the ancestors and the deities are more closer to God than any other person. That was the mode of worship, and that is how we Africans communicate to the Supreme Being before the coming of the Europeans. However, in Cape Coast here, we have 77 of such shrines in the town, or 77 deities in the town. This is one of them. He is called Nana Tabre. Nana Tabre, that is the name of the deity. However, this shrine or this deity was on this very land before this whole edifice was built. But then after the Europeans acquired the land from the chiefs, they were denying the local people from worshipping from this side. They performed the sacrifice, took the shrine from here to another place. Later, when the trade ended in the castle, that is when they felt they need to bring it back to its original position. And so, what I'm trying to put across is that when the captives were in here, this wasn't here. It was only brought back when the trade ended in the castle. That is how come today we still see a shrine in here. It is still an active shrine for the indigenous people in the town. Any question, please?
The drink, the alcohol.
Schnapps.
Okay, so,
Yeah, but isn't there some kind of, because who Schnapps owned by?
So, we as Africans, before we can communicate to the deities or the ancestors, we need to pray, and we pray by pouring libation, which the libation could be done with alcohol, how do they call it, just as you see over here.
Yeah, but the actual company that produces this is not Ghanaian, it's not African, is it?
No, I think
So
it's
the people that
German
with palm wine or appetition or something.
Yes,
Why?
exactly.
Yeah. So why is that not exhibited then? Because these are foreign.
No, so most of the times, not necessarily. Let's jump dark. The place was. There was more dark as you see now because the main entrance will be shut down. Once the main entrance is shut down, the whole place was very dark. It was very difficult to even identify whoever was sitting next to you then. And so you could imagine people being in here from 2 weeks to 3 months without moving out, defecating, doing all sort of things in here. What is going to happen to them? Many people died in the dungeon. May those who died in the dungeons rest in peace. The male dungeon. Just right above the dungeon, 3 windows above the dungeon. This was a church. The first English church or the first Anglican church. And so whilst there were others up here claiming they were worshiping God, singing praises to God, preaching love your neighbor as yourself, there were others in the dungeons dying and suffering. But then the big question we need to ask ourselves is that why should they even build a church on top of a slave dungeon? When you visit the Elmina Castle, they have a church sitting just right above the female slave dungeon with a quotation, Psalm 132 verse 13, which says that Zion is a lost resting place and there she will rest forever. Indeed, if we truly have heaven and hell, perhaps they are trying to teach us about the concept of heaven and hell. Other than that, I personally do not understand the reason why others must be up here claiming they were worshiping God, and just right beneath them there were others in the dungeons dying and suffering. But the remaining three this way, these are European grapes. I don't know if you still want to know about them. So let's move ahead and let's see the condemned sale. As it has clearly written on top, it is not an ordinary sale, but a condemned sale. It looks as if the punishment given to the men inside the male dungeon wasn't enough. They still went ahead to create a condemned cell, enslaved African men who fought for their freedom. They were seen to be stubborn, aggressive, rebellious. They were all locked up in this very cell. Nobody went through this side and came back alive. Less than 72 hours in here, nobody is going to survive in this very cell. So very soon, moving in, and I'll explain to you why nobody survived in here. But then, of all the doors, of all the fittings we have inside the castle, this door is the only original door left in the castle. A little above 2 centuries. It is made of pitch pine timber, and then just at the back, it has been covered with copper. The only original door left in the castle, a little above 200 years. And so if this door could talk, it could tell us more. So let's see what is in here. Please keep your head down. The first 2 doors in the middle, it has been taken off. Left to the last one, even the last one, the door, it is still open. You can still feel the heat in here. You can imagine all the 3 doors are locked up. No food, no water was given to them. They were still in chains and in shackles, out of suffocation and in starvation. Nobody survived in here. Nobody comes in here and then goes back alive because of the conditions that existed in here. You see these markings on the ground. These markings on the ground was done by the captives with their chains and shackles. Out of struggling and pain, they had to scratch the ground with their chains and shackles.
So why did they put them in here if they weren't expected to come out alive? Did anyone come out alive? To show an example, isn't it?
Less than 72 hours. Nobody's going to survive in here due to the conditions in
so
here.
So it's a point to put them in here just to die, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
And to show the other people who didn't come back, you know, he's dead, isn't it? So nobody, then you lower your anger and try to escape because there's no point.
Make our way through the tunnel. At this side is going to help us see how big the tunnel is. So it looks like, so from where we have the shrine, that is the entrance to the tunnel. This side only served as an observatory. A soldier needs to be out here with a gun. All he does is to make sure everyone moves down into the ship. So from here we'll see the end of the tunnel. But please remember, nobody entered the tunnel from this side. Nobody came out from this side. This only served as an observatory. So please, you can have a look at it. Just be careful. There is no stairs in here. Be careful.
So
just look down on the slaves here going to...
Yeah, something like that.
That is the end of the passage. It has been blocked from this side as well. All the men would have to walk through till they get to this very point. The woman needs to join the men in here. This side was a final exit into the ships. Sometimes the way from the ocean was sometimes very rough. This side needed to be blocked off. After this side was blocked off, they later created the door of no return, where nobody went through that door and came back into the castle. Again, very soon we shall see the door of no return. I will explain to you why it is called the door of no return. But for now, let us see the cell out here. This is a cell, a punishment cell for our grandmothers and mothers. Officials in the castle, when they left for Africa, they never came to Africa with their wives. And so whenever there was a need for them to have sex, they were left with no option to abuse our mothers and grandmothers. Those of them who resisted rape from the officials, they were beaten up severely and then later locked in here for a couple of days. A very huge metal gate covering the side. Food and water was only given to them through the side. There is an open space in here, that is where they had to defecate and urinate. Those of our mothers and grandmothers who resisted rape, they were the ones held in here for 7 to 10 days before they were released back.